Welcome to Agents of Disease, an EOG review for 8th grade science. First, we need to know what classifies an organism as bacteria. Bacteria are single-celled organisms that have no nucleus. This means they are prokaryotes. You can contrast that to eukaryotes, like you and me, organisms with a nucleus in the cell. So bacteria are prokaryotes, and they reproduce by binary fission, which simply they basically divide. There are a lot of different types of bacteria. There are composers, consumers, decomposers, producers. Cyanobacteria usually live in water. They can be green, blue, or red tint, and they're photosynthetic because of chlorophyll. Cyanobacteria live inside other bacteria to create the first plant cells. Is a theory about how life evolved on Earth. Archaebacteria. This is a category of bacteria which like extreme environments. They are called extremophiles. They like to live in very hot places like hydrothermal vents, hot springs, remember those hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the ocean, or very salty places like the Dead Sea and Great Salt Lake. They give off methane, and they can be in swamps and even your intestines. Bacteria generally come in 3 shapes. They come in sphere-shaped, rod-shaped, or spiral-shaped, which you can see here. Bacteria have a lot of uses. A lot of times we think of bacteria as germs, and something that's really bad for you, but really we use them a lot. They're in food like yogurts, cheese, bioremediation we talked about when we were talking about water quality and cleanup. Remember talking about the water treatment plants, which you can see pictured here. They actually have bacteria that eats up all those really dirty nasties that we flush down the toilet before that water circles back to coming out of our faucets. That's very important. They use it for oil spills and all sorts of things. So bioremediation just means bio is a living thing used to remediate or make better, return to its prior condition. So it's making these environmental conditions improved by using bacteria. Of course, they're important for nitrogen fixation. Remember, all living things require nitrogen because nitrogen is a key component of DNA. And so every single cell in your body has DNA, needs nitrogen, and the only way they can get that is if bacteria take that nitrogen out of the air, convert that usually in the nodules of plant roots, and then we eat it through the food chain. As most things get passed, is up through the food chain. They're important for decomposition, again, part of that whole circle of life thing, and digestion. Common bacterial infections, you can see there strep throat. It's a really nasty one with the white tonsils at the back. E. coli, Lyme disease, salmonella are very common bacterial infections. And when you get a bacterial infection, that's when you want to go to your doctor and get antibiotics. Remember, antibiotics make bacterial infections better, but beware, antibiotic resistance, how's that for alliteration? So remembering all those B's go together, antibiotics are for your bacterial infections. So some bacterial infections can be treated by antibiotics, but of course there's that area where you need to have exercise caution. Because if you're using antibiotics too frequently, then what you're doing is when you take an antibiotic, you are killing all of the bacteria that are affected by that antibiotic, which is great. But then you're leaving behind the ones that aren't affected by the antibiotic. So instead of having just a very small percent of resistant bacteria in your body, that your body can pretty much overcome this disease on its own, then you've got all, or almost all of bacteria in your body are antibiotic resistant. And then if your body can't overcome it on its own, you have no tools at your disposal. This is a really big and serious problem. So this overprescription of antibiotic treatments is really bad for you, but also bad for your neighbors in the whole world. You're affecting everybody with this decision that you make. Most of the time, your body, if you're not immunocompromised, if you're don't have some other disease affecting your body, you can pretty much overcome strep throat. It's going to be 10 days, but you'll be fine. You should resist the urge to take antibiotic treatments for something that your body is capable of overcoming. Because should you encounter something that your body is not overcoming, then you go get your antibiotics, and hopefully it's not antibiotic resistant. Viruses, however, there's actually debate on whether they're living or non-living. We're going to go with they are not living. They're not a living organism because they require a host. Outside of a host, they're inactive. They are not made of cells. They are just actually little strands of DNA and nucleic acids and proteins. They reproduce only within a host cell. They invade a host cell, and then they trick that cell into replicating itself and then bursting out of it and destroying the host cell. So they lack some of those characteristics of living organisms. So outside of a living host cell, viruses cannot move, grow, or reproduce. And ultimately, they're going to harm or destroy their host cell. So viruses, not a living thing. Common viral infections are going to be the flu, common cold, HIV, AIDS, chickenpox, diarrhea, herpes, the new Zika virus, hepatitis, and HPV. Viral infections are different from bacterial infections because they cannot be treated by an antibiotic in general. However, viral infections can be prevented by the use of vaccines. You actually take a vaccine before you get sick in order for it to be effective. So many viral infections can be prevented by taking a vaccine before you're sick. Typically, this is going to involve a vaccine is made by taking either a dead portion or a small portion of the actual virus itself and training your body to fight it off, which is really cool. It's like a practice round. I compare this in class to watching game tapes of other teams you're going to be competing against in a sport. If you know what they're going to do, then you can go into this game and you can have an advantage and you can knock them out in the first quarter. Whereas if you're just kind of learning on the fly, it might take you half the game to figure out, oh yeah, that's their shooter. Or whomever. I'm not a sports person, but I try. So this is where your body's actually fighting off the disease. Comparing that back to antibiotics, the antibiotic medication in a bacterial infection actually goes and attacks the bacteria. So in a vaccine, the vaccine is just really training your body to recognize portions of the viral infection so that when you do get the actual real disease, your body's like, oh, I know this guy, bam, and take him out. So vaccines prevent viral infections. Look out for tricky questions about that on the EOG, because that's really an important concept they want you to get so when you are an adult citizen, you're not going to the doctor to get antibiotics for the flu, because it's not going to do anything because the flu is a viral infection. So other agents of disease include fungal infections. Common diseases here are going to be athlete's foot, ringworm, which you can see those lovely pictures there I made for you. Thank you, Google. They can be treated by topical or oral antifungal medications, creams or pills, basically, are going to make these better. And last but not least, parasites. Parasites are those little nasties who like to live on a host. That's you for an extended period of time. Common human parasites are tapeworm, ticks, lice. Some can be treated by antibiotics or other medications, but not all can be treated. And so how does disease spread? In general, it's through direct contact. Contaminated objects. Say I sneeze on something and then you eat it because I'm a cook at a restaurant and I'm gross. Sorry, gotcha. Holding hands, kissing, airborne droplets or aerosols. That's why we sneeze like this. Skin or mucous membranes, blood and or sexual contact, fecal oral transmission, contamination of foods. That's, again, make sure you're washing your hands after you use the restroom. And vectors. Vectors is a key term you should know. Vectors are those agents of disease that don't get sick themselves but carry that disease to you. Those are going to be like mosquitoes, ticks, flies, fleas, rats, birds, raccoons, all those nasties that can make you sick just by carrying the disease around and then dropping it off to you. So the World Health Organization has some things to say on vectors. In fact, more than 1 billion cases and over 1 million deaths are from vector-borne diseases such as malaria, dengue, human African, I can't pronounce all those words, but lots of them, and typically they're from mosquitoes. We are really lucky because we have access to things like DEET and other natural repellents here. There's a huge connection between urbanization, travel, quality of drinking water, access to medicine, economy, and the heat. Obviously, mosquitoes like warm, hot, moist environments. So countries that have warm, hot, moist environments year-round have a lot more of these diseases than, say, the continental United States. But this can be spread through trade, travel, urbanization. We talked a little bit about invasive species that come onto packages or shoes or in cargo that are carried over from country to country by accident or on purpose. vectors can be among those invasive species or carrying the diseases to spread. So vector-borne diseases are going to spread a lot by trade and transportation. Keep that in mind. So again, this has been Agents of Disease, an EOG review for the 8th grade science test. Thank you.